Hi gang, this The Joy of Football is full of quirks.
We need to talk about, amongst subjects, Wolves, managers, transfer window, Arsenal defending, and Danny Welbeck for England.
Voice of Passion is weird because it's Martin's voice of passion and I sort of voice of reason.
Sort of. And we've got three of the best, of course, which I know we love doing and I hope you love as well. And there's an interesting array of talents from very young to not so young.
And finally, letter from the gantry, and Martin's been first round of the FA Cupping for the zillionth year running. Don't forget, if you like the podcast, you can subscribe. If you want to comment, you can go to the comments below. And if you want to read us, you can do so on substack.com, where the Joy of Football publications are as well. Just join in everything. The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks like Xavi! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football. Hello, The Joy of Football with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. We have arrived at the sacking season for management, so just a message from Martin and me to the producers. Watch yourselves. We start with...
I think their win percentage is pretty good, to be fair, Neil, so I think at the moment they're all right.
Yeah, but I might do a Van der Ven and Spence on them and walk past them when they ask me to go and acknowledge the listeners and the viewers. They
don't keep in the background like most directors, do they? So.
Let's start with, because we need to talk about. And we need to talk about Wolverhampton Wanderers, who have sacked their manager. You were at the game, Fulham versus Wolves. We have the programme on display for those watching it.
I was in the press conference as well afterwards, where nobody actually asked him directly, do you think he'll be in the job tomorrow? And the answer would have been, of course, I hope so, but he wasn't. He lost his job the next day. It was a fairly... these are very difficult things to deal with. I mean, reporters are human beings as well, despite the supposedly cutting edge of their media. I've had one or two occasions in my career when I've had to, knowing that the manager knew he was on his last legs, and I've had to be fronting up to ask him the questions. And mostly they understand that this has to be, it's not a personal thing, it's a professional thing.
I mean, it must have been awful for him, because I was obviously at Wolves in the Carabao Cup when they got knocked out. And when the Chelsea fans started singing "Sacked in the Morning," the whole Wolves end joined in.
Well, they were singing "Sacked in the Morning" at Craven Cottage as well. And
he went drinking with them last season.
Yeah, but he made reference to the game that you were at by saying that some of his players, and Fulham played, I think, the day earlier, so that Wolves had put so much into that recovery second half, which didn't quite complete the comeback, but they gave a real... In fact, they got applauded off by those supporters who'd been singing in the first half. And the players, although he made several changes, some of the key players involved weren't right. And Totti Gomez was taken off at half-time. He actually mentioned, Vítor Pereira mentioned that he was physically struggling, mentally struggling, and that the... if you like, the after effects of playing on Wednesday. Strangely enough, I didn't ask any question, but a question came to mind. It was more a statement, really. Thinking he would be manager next Saturday, which is the game against Chelsea in the league at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea going to Azerbaijan and back in the interim, and Wolves have a free week. So that particular advantage might work for in favour of whoever manages Wolves on that day now. The other thing about it is that I do think there's nothing club can do now when they're in a position like Wolves but change the manager. And it's my view that the transfer window, for all the benefits, and there must be some, we've had 20 years of it.
It wasn't brought in out of choice. It was brought in out of European Union or
all these
such
things.
rules.
All these things can be challenged, and it wasn't challenged, and people seem to accept it rather readily. I thought, including the players, I suppose it was better for them to some extent. But so Wolves are in a position where they need new players, they can't get them. So something's got to change. It has to be the manager. I looked up a couple of things, Neil. I think it was the last year of the old transfer window, which was towards the end of March. Didn't do anything up till then.
Yeah, the transfer window was from the beginning of June, July, at the beginning of the season.
Once the last season finished, basically.
Right through to the third Thursday in March, and you could buy or sell anyone.
Yeah, so I looked up a couple that might have helped Wolves if you put it into modern day context. November 2001, Robbie Fowler, Liverpool to Leeds, which was obviously a big deal. The following month, December 2001, Andy Cole, Manchester United to Blackburn Rovers. Again, the sort of deal, if it was possible now, would help a manager, and I'm sure help the managers. Even in that time, Wolves brought in Kenny Miller from Scotland, and Dean Sturridge, who'd been on loan. A loan deal was possible then, which of course isn't possible now. And just to put some context on it, with our recent podcast, Steve Sidwell, who talked very warmly about his move to Brentford in that what would be now a close transfer season, he went from Arsenal to Brentford and started his career with something that happened, which again wouldn't happen time-wise now. So I do think that could be reassessed. I think it is unfair on managers. They have to cop it. What else can you do? Speaking to one or two of my friends behind the scenes at Wolves after the game, was really that there's no alternative, and now only it benefits managers in the sense that there are out of work managers who are queuing around the block to get the job. But I think I just don't see the logic of it. Financially, but we've got now the sustainability and profit. So in the old days, the big clubs could buy it whenever they want up until the third Thursday in March. So they splashed the cash because they had more money and nobody controlled it. That's why one of the reasons why it was brought in. Now it is controllable, because you can't overspend your financial budget, whatever it is. And of course, the rich clubs are richer than other clubs, but not so far that it would really wreck the whole game if we went back to the third Thursday in March. So it's just a thought. A lot of what
to be fair, it didn't have any effect on the game, because if you look at it in the 60s, the 60s was really the last decade where no club dominated. And in the 70s, Liverpool dominated, and then the 80s, like no club had before. And then in the 90s...
But lots of different clubs finished second to Liverpool in the league. Ipswich, Southampton, Watford, teams like that.
Yeah, and in the 90s and 2000s, Manchester United dominated like no club had before. Yeah, Arsenal had their championships and Chelsea had theirs, but it was domination. And of course, Manchester City have dominated, basically since they won their first title in 2012. And they've dominated on the whole since.
I'm glad you remembered that, Neil.
Aguero! But I want to. If I were a supporter of Wolves, and I could be, I like Molineux. I've talked to you about that before. I know you don't like it as much since it's been redesigned.
I don't like on the far side where they built this sort of curved stand. I think that was a miscalculation. I like my stands to be alongside.
I like
maximum viewing, to be honest.
I like it because the away supporters were on the side of the pitch and I was on the halfway line for the Carabao Cup final.
But don't forget, I'm a bit older than you, Neil. You have pointed this out in many a podcast, but just to remind you, and I grew up with Wolves being a really dominant force in the 50s.
The top team in the country.
Yeah, and
first team with floodlights who had regular exhibition games against huge foreign opposition.
Yeah, live on television. Imagine that, live on television.
Before the European Cup was created.
Yeah.
If I were a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan, I would have loved being a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan when Jack Hayward owned it in the early part of the 2000s, this 21st century, because he was a Wolves fan, putting his money into it. He was followed by Steve Morgan, who was a Liverpool fan, and very much openly so. But he tried, and he put money into it. It was then bought out in 2016 by Fosun, the Chinese company. And this was the beginning of business moving in, and they had to prove themselves. And in a way they did. And they set up this relationship with Jorge Mendes and the whole Portuguese thing. He brought in Nuno Espirito Santo. Did I get it right that time?
Yeah.
He brought him in. I didn't realise.
Writing on his report, improving.
I didn't realise that Nuno was Jorge Mendes' first client ever. So he brought him in, and then all these Portuguese players came in, and they did so well. They got into Europe. They were regularly in the top 10 in the league. They did brilliantly. But somehow the finances went over the top, and they got fined, and everything went wrong. And they ditched Santo when he had his first really bad season. So he was managed from 2017 to 21. Since then,
promoted.
Having got promotion in 2018, he got promoted. So since then, Bruno...
And into Europe, by the way.
Yeah. And so since 2021, they had Bruno Lage, 21 to 22, Lopetegui, 22 to 23.
Who walked out, basically, because of the transfer.
Because they wouldn't back the squad.
But they wouldn't back his ambition.
Gary O'Neill, 23 to 24. Pereira took over in December 24 and has gone in November 25. You have to look at the hierarchy, and you have to look at the directors of football and say, you don't know what you're doing.
Well, I think it's one person. What I gather is the man in charge from Fosun is the one who's made the decision. Who was very loyal to Vítor Pereira up until the sacking day. This new contract, although I understand that there are clauses in the contract that it's not going to get the 3-year deal paid up in full. There are break clauses on both sides, I guess, but certainly on the club side. So it's not going to seem as ludicrous as some of the big payoffs in the Mourinho class. Maybe it's not in that. And that's Portuguese as well, isn't it?
And Mendes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I think they've lost the Britishness. I mean, Matt Doherty is from the Republic of Ireland. I think there is a backup player who was on the bench for your game, who is technically English but wasn't born in England. And there is one of the reasons Vítor Pereira was brought in and was successful. Remember, he won 6 games in a row in a period last season, a point he did make in this press conference after the Fulham game, because he spoke Portuguese. And the Brazilians and obviously the Portuguese players all speak that language. So that immediately gave the dressing room a bit more of a communication boost.
I mean, we've been through so many times the players that they've sold, and it's happened again this last summer with Cunha and Nori going.
The other programme there is the game against Brighton, which I commentated on, where Cunha scored his first goal for Manchester United after that big move. And what a beautiful goal it was. So, that was a sort of rubber stamping of the talent that I actually witnessed. So.
But it has been a disintegration that is extremely worrying for the club, in a way that Southampton was last season, as we talked Southampton.
What about Southampton now?
Their new manager this season.
He's gone.
Yeah, Will Still. And I mean, these clubs are getting themselves into financial trouble, are getting themselves into director of football trouble, and the manager into lack of good quality player trouble, and the manager, the head coach.
And there's a suggestion that Russell Martin is the players' preferred choice to go back, because he got them out of the Championship a couple of years ago. And that by the time this goes to air, that might have happened. And we wait to see whether Gary O'Neill will be appointed by Wolves. There's something else that's being floated at the moment. As I say, that this will easily be updated, so we can't go too far on that. It's a complicated relationship between managers and players these days, I think. Players have a lot of clout. and they're safe under this system, under contracts, under the transfer window. They can, if you like, if they're not happy, they can do that from a position of strength. Whereas the manager has only got one route, which is to win games.
Yeah. I mean,
so I felt sorry for Vítor Pereira. He was a forlorn figure. He fronted up in this press conference, and he would have been ready to go to work and take the team back into Southwest London for the following game, but it's not going to be.
No. One other thing on this. For my game at Molineux in the League Cup, it's a 31,000 capacity. There are only 24,000 there. And I do feel as though if the owners and the whole setup doesn't relate to the supporters, they'll start staying away.
Yeah, but you've got another issue. I don't know this, Neil. This is off the top of my head. But if it's not in your season ticket, then this day and age, that to me, it could have been a lot less than that.
Well, let's also look at Fulham, because Fulham had, I think, 26,000, and their capacity is 30,000 now. But that's more probably the price of the seats.
Well, also they've been on a poor run. I mean, Marco Silva is a top guy, and I know you're a big fan of his as well now. There was a lot of relief in that result. There was I said we were going to talk about it, but very quickly that it struck me as an older person how poignant's the wrong word, but how it fitted when Wolves lost to players. The last Aguedu got sent off as the last man, denying a goal-scoring opportunity. And that all stemmed, really, the lawmakers looking at it, certainly as far as English football was concerned, from the FA Cup final of 1980, when a Arsenal defender, Willie Young, stopped in his tracks, running through one-on-one just to get to the goal, pulled back. Paul Allen, who was a midfield player but had made one of those West Ham third-man runs and was not sent off. And Willie died the day before this incident happened. And in a way, it wasn't 3 years old. It wasn't his legacy in a sense that it didn't paint him in a complimentary light, but actually did the game a great service by committing that foul, because that was pretty soon after that was addressed.
Yeah.
But rest in peace, Willie, a good man.
Yeah.
And Colin Addison as well, who was another man who was very, very helpful to commentators.
Yeah, lovely. I want to just take this on one more notch and have a disagreement with you, because we disagree on this. But I think we talk a lot about players burning out with too many games. I don't think we talk enough about managers burning out, and not necessarily just with too many games, but with just too much pressure. And we talk a lot about mental health with players. We never talk about it with managers.
The managers do. The LMA are wonderful now. They do physical checks on all their members, ex-members or ex-managers, and mental health checks as well. So there is a comfort blanket, if you like, and the League Managers Association is very, very important. And we know most managers in the spotlight are well paid. Not everyone is, and they support the lesser brethren and the sisters, of course, as well in it. And they are they're great. So that there is some backup.
But I mean, Vítor Pereira, to be fair, when things were going well, looked as though it was the end of the world in his mannerisms. That was just his style.
Not when he was in Wetherspoons, I don't
but other pubs are available. Pub chains are available, and independent ones even better. But I do think.
But he went to Wetherspoons.
But I do think that. I think that Enzo Maresca looks absolutely at the end of his tether, even though Chelsea are not doing badly. In press conferences, his eyes are empty and he just looks, oh my God, do I have to do one more of these? And then it gets going and he gets into it. I think Luis Enrique this season, whenever I've seen him, has looked absolutely drained beyond belief. And I I also feel quite strongly that managers have different ways of preparing for games. And Antonio Conte, who has been one of the best domestic league managers of the last 10, 15 years. I think he won three leagues with Juventus, came to England and won a league with Chelsea, went to back to Italy and won it with Inter Milan, and then won it with Napoli. But he's never done well in Europe. And he's never had as good a season domestically when he's been in Europe as he has when he's not been in Europe. And I look at Newcastle and I think Eddie Howe, both 2 years ago when they were in the Champions League and this year, has looked exhausted. And again, has not had such good years domestically. And I just wonder how many of them have ways of working that are not suited, preparation and everything.
What we're talking about, Neil, it's a fair point, but the reason is quite simple, is because they know they'll get the sack if it doesn't go well. That pressure is there every time. It's sort of Damocles hanging over their heads. And the game has allowed this to happen because that's where the finger is pointed when the results are bad. But whatever level you manage at, and I've a little bit of experience of it in non-league football, it never leaves you. Even if you're doing well, it never leaves you. The joy of victory lasts about 5 minutes. And then you're thinking, who are we playing next week? Or who are we playing in the midweek? And then you turn your mind to it. And that is something that there are people who have flick switches, I'm sure, who don't maybe suffer as much as say Maresca looks as though he's suffering. I don't know, but Pep Guardiola looks as though he thinks about football every minute of the day. And why Alex Ferguson was successful, I think, is that he did what the public front of managing, and of course he managed the dressing room brilliantly. But when the training wasn't down to him, he had some very good coaches, and he changed those coaches regularly so it didn't get repetitive. It was another skill that he had. So I think either that, you've got to have something else. Arsene Wenger used to go to the theatre a lot, I believe, but he's still thinking about football every minute of every day now. So it's an obsession to be a manager. There are some managers who don't like the game. I've come across one or two just using it as a job, and they can deal with it much better. But if you really love the game and you want to create something, but I would say it's just all the pressures that are pointing to the manager, as we started this conversation about.
And just one other thing on this before we leave it. If you were a young player now, and I know that's a bit of a jump for you right now, but
no, I'd love that.
If you were a young player now with certain clubs looking at you, several clubs looking at you, wouldn't you say, if this club changes its manager every year, I'm not going to get a go because I won't be allowed to develop. I need to go to a club which has a stable manager who believes in me in order to let me develop. And the changes of manager, no young player's going to break through.
Well, they don't break through into the first team very often. And so for the academy coaching system is very stable usually. Those changes are much fewer, and you have a much longer life expectancy in the job if you're an academy coach.
But I look at Arsenal, where Arteta's now been in the job for a long time, and there's an awful lot of academy promotion at Arsenal and a chance for players to develop.
But it comes in cycles. I mean, when I was at Woking, we played the Arsenal under-18s, under-19s with our men's team. We won easily. We wouldn't look to one player to take on loan to come to our club. So that year, look at Southampton, a wonderful production line. How they'd be desperately looking to get somebody out of that academy to go into the first team, and it's not happening. Tyler Dibbling was done; he's gone. So, so there is. It does go in cycles, but the truth is, being very cynical about it, if I'm a young player and I'm going to try and get the best deal that's the football is almost secondary. Of course, the attraction if you want to play for a club that you support. If you come through there, and I'm going to talk about Jack Wilshere in the letter, but I forgot he was a West Ham fan, and I think Ray Parlour was a West Ham, but they come through at Arsenal, and so they, Jamie Carrick, we used to joke about in commentary, went everywhere with Everton, not just a fan, he went everywhere. He was a super fan, and then he ends up playing 700 games for Liverpool, and he's now obviously emotionally attached to Liverpool. I can't get out what Everton means to him now because I don't think he'd dare tell anybody. He's probably
it's different for professional footballers. They're allowed to support 2 or 3 teams if they played for them.
Yeah, but as I say, as a kid, I'm saying if I was an Arsenal fan and I wanted Arsenal for me, I'd probably give them the best chance of getting me. So it is about the deal. I think in every level of the game, you expect the managers, if they last, you're full of praise for them. The system doesn't actually work in their favour.
Peter Crouch, I know, wouldn't join the Chelsea Academy because his father thought it would kill him if he didn't make it there. So he went to Tottenham, didn't make it there, and he was quite happy.
It's always an interesting one if they've been a season together. The one, and sadly, he got injured there. And the manager of West Bromwich Albion, his career finished at Chelsea. In a game at Chelsea playing for Hull was Ryan Mason, who, unbeknown to the Spurs fans who were singing one of their own about Ryan, he wasn't. He was a Chelsea fan, really. He was one of their own through the system, of course. But I wish him well because he's bounced back into the game with real resilience, and he deserves all the progress that he's making.
We're going to stick with we need to talk about Arsenal's defence. We talk a lot about Arsenal, but not specifically about their defending. Me and my Chelsea mates are very worried because, of course, the best record, top flight record, defensively in history in England was the 2004-2005 season when Chelsea conceded just 15 goals. Arsenal in their first 10 games have conceded 3. So they are on target to become the greatest defending team in history. Why is Arsenal's defence so good?
I think partly because pretty much all of them do a defensive job. I'm amazed that defenders have got the energy to defend when they're upfield scoring all the goals as well.
The extraordinary thing this season is with essentially 2 new fullbacks.
Yes, it's a collective thing. I mean, everybody will say, all the back four will say, look, I couldn't do it without the challenge in midfield, the tracking back, discipline. I think one factor that strikes me is if you've come so close, you're looking at how we didn't win it from Arsenal's point of view. And the players that have been through that, those margins are so slight. One of those margins may be, I didn't track back on that goal scored that cost us 2 points or 3 points. And maybe that attention to detail, obviously the set piece goals show that their attention to detail is enormous. And I think that probably goes throughout the whole system of the club. Very good players, battled hardened young players, as you say, coming in and defying the age. you can't have 15-year-olds playing, but you have, and so it's just as you know, I work at the Woking Academy, and I look at their 19; they're really old, 18, 19, compared to some of the Arsenal players. So great talent recruitment at an early age, get them through, educate them properly, stability and sticking with Mikel Arteta. I'm sure that helps an enormous amount. And yeah, it's on. I'd be surprised if they do it because it's with obviously Chelsea had Europe as well, didn't they, that season? Or did they not?
Yeah, Champions League.
Yeah. But now it's maybe a few more games. Arsenal got big ambitions for the Champions League after a good showing last year. So I think that might take its toll. But Gabriel, he seems to be the leader of it all, doesn't he? He seems to be if you want to pick one person, and David Raya, of course, who has made some extraordinary saves. He's not alone in the Premier League doing that, but he probably needs more concentration than most goalkeepers because those shots don't come in very often.
Yeah, I think I'm worried. One more we need to talk about. England are going to the World Cup. They'll need 3 centre-forwards in the squad. Harry Kane's a given. Who are the other 2? Should Danny Welbeck be one of them?
Well, we're here because we're talking football because it's the joy of football and we're romantics about the game, and the answer is unequivocally yes. Because it's a very British thing, isn't it, to see this sort of unexpected thing happen, and particularly for older players. I mean, it doesn't happen so often in football, but there have been people who've been capped at quite a late age. But we're not talking about first caps. This is somebody who's played 42 games, I think it is, for England. And 16 goals, something like that. I mean,
if we look at the alternatives, Ollie Watkins, obviously.
Yeah, so he's got some credit in the bank, I think.
Ivan Toney.
Well, maybe he hasn't, but simply because Thomas Tuchel didn't go to see him, I believe, right at the beginning of that. I don't know whether he's been to see him since, whether that's something that will be held against him. It's not been, people haven't been sending him tickets to get back to Wembley, have they, from the FA? So he's a good player.
Marcus Rashford, would you still consider him, or is he a wide player?
It just depends what the season has. This is. I'm going to get onto this in a minute. It's about the now. It's not about what has happened. It's now and in terms of the World Cup, the future. Yeah, he'll be in the squad. I'm sure he'll be in the squad. So he's an option to play up there. So whether we get into the category of Danny Welbeck is not a conventional centre forward. Danny drops into midfield. He makes clever passes as well as very clever runs coming
Sounds
from
like
deep
Harry
position.
Kane.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, to have when is it? He's not 35 until after the next lot of international. Danny Welbeck. He's 35 before we get into December, and he's scored half a dozen goals as we speak. He got 10 in the Premier League for the very first time in a long career. Last season, finally got into double figures, and then unless something befalls him, he'll do it again this year. So yeah, the wine and old wine aging and being, an even better flavour. He just looks so at home. And this is a team that doesn't win every week. I mean, I saw them. We've got the programme there, as I mentioned it for those of you who are watching. But he scored. He scored from a free kick, which I think is only the second time he'd done in the Premier League. Yeah. So he obviously wasn't on free kicks in many places. So he's doing all sorts of things.
I mean,
he looks fit as a flea, he really does.
If I go down the Premier League as it stands, the highest English centre forward, well, he's not playing, he's injured, is Dominic Solanke. Mm-hmm. I can't see him getting a selection, although I love him, of course, because he came through at Chelsea. Mm. Then you're down to Ollie Watkins, who's in the bottom half of the table. Mm. And then you're really struggling. You're really going down the table. And I mean, Jared Bowen, would he be considered as a centre forward?
I don't think as a centre forward, no.
So,
but he's. I really hope he's in the squad, because talk about, I don't know, all this expected stuff is a bit lost on me, really. All I know is when I see him play, he influences games enormously.
Yeah. I mean, the way we're talking, Danny Welbeck looks harder to leave out than to include. That is what I'm thinking. Anyway, it's lovely that an old man is doing such a fine job.
Are we talking about ourselves here?
Yeah.
Or?
Right. We needed to talk about, we have done, we move on. And we move on to something unique to the Joy of Football podcast, because it is Voice of Passion.
Voice of Passion.
Which is normally me, but today is him.
Well, I'm not going to deliver it in the Neil Barnett style.
It's all right. I'm not going to be the flipping voice of reason, I promise you.
You soapboxing, you're doing very, very well on your soapboxes. I'm just a little bit irritated by this sort of weekly
Martin Tyler, I'm just a little bit irritated.
the voice of a little bit irritated. This instant categorizing of football as to it's changed, the game is this, it's a possession-based Premier League, the long ball has now resurfaced, and the amount of set-piece goals is being analysed, and everything's being put into a box. After every weekend, there's some editorial saying the game is doing this and doing that. It's football. It's football. It evolves. It goes back to where it goes round in full circle. The simple fact is that it's still the most entertaining game in the world. You can support your team. You can even support your style of football. But I was going to tell you this because it's sort of an FA thing. A guy called Robin Russell is a long-time friend of mine who was a coach at the FA National School. You remember that at Lilleshall? Yeah. He became the FA Assistant Director of Coaching between 1989 and 1997. He was a technical coordinator at the FA 97 to 05, responsible for the FA Pro license content, and played charity football with me. He had the best long throw I have ever seen or been on the field with, not perhaps I've ever seen. I knew when he was played, didn't play every game, but I knew that I was in because he could throw it miles. And so that was somebody who was shaping the Football Association for 30 years, really. And he's still involved, and he's working overseas from time to time now, I think, and doing great work. And so this sort of discovery that the long throw is something new. It's never gone away, and I've commentated at all these levels, and it's always been there. It's never, at the times it's been sneered at. Too many set-piece goals, not enough set-piece goals, too much possession, not enough possession. Bob Paisley had a great expression. It's not about the short ball or the long ball, it's about the right ball. And that's what football is. So once it's happened, it's happened. And the data is fascinating. But I believe this, Neil, that no two incidents on a football field are ever the same. How can they be? The pitch might be different. The opposition might be different. The player involved who's been judged by data might have a cold. The wind might be blowing. The sun might be shining. The referee might have made a different decision. Obviously, this applies to referees as well, how they can be expected to do the same thing and to make them robotic. Part of the charm is that we go to games. Why do we go to games? We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. For all the prep we do and all the detail I've done in my commentary career, the thrill of it, we don't know. We know what they're trying to do. Yeah, it's unscripted. Yeah. And I just think people should remember that.
And the unscripted players are the ones we pay the most to watch.
Yes. And of course, of course, you have to have patterns. You have to have a structure. We even, believe it or not, we have a structure for this podcast, which is totally down to Neil, I would say. But then it happens, and then and to say, oh well, that ball. Let me talk about one example. Chelsea, you were there. Chelsea stuck 3 up when they were defending the Danso long throw. Yeah. So really, the coaches would bring 4 back because you're supposed to have 1 overload as a defensive side of the game. But I think you said Spurs brought 3 back. Yeah. 3 back. Right. Well, I was thinking, well, that's clever.
But they didn't put 3 back with them. They were still 5-10 yards in front of them. So when Sanchez, the goalkeeper, came and caught the long throw and threw it out, they were immediately completely split Tottenham open.
One of the things that, of course, that Spurs didn't do very well was block Sanchez.
Well, also because they took 3.
That's what you're supposed to do.
But they took 3 people out of the penalty area because Chelsea put 3 up.
Yeah. But as an attacking team, you like that space because you've got attackers to use the space to get to the ball, not being blocked off by defenders.
In the last couple of years, I put a tweet out when Chelsea were conceding loads of goals from set plays, saying, why can't we just have two people defending each post and a couple of people upfield and reduce the number of people in the penalty area? And I got a message, not a tweet, I got a message from an ex-Chelsea player who was coaching abroad.
So he's a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
He said, we haven't said any more than that.
Saying, I do all the set pieces and it's impossible now. You need to use everybody. You need all 11 back. And yet, when the long throw goals keep going in, 3 Chelsea have conceded this season, goals, suddenly someone has the bright idea of, as you say, putting 3 up. And it worked. It worked.
Well, it will work. It worked then because it caught Spurs by surprise. But it won't work next time because
they had the data.
Well, yeah.
So you come up with something new.
You come up with something, and the Spurs it's Wolves, isn't it? So goodness knows who's going to be making these decisions, but they will look and say, well, we've got to be aware of that, and they'll come up with something that is. A reaction, it's chain reaction, basically. That's what it is.
Well, Enzo Maresca watches 6 games in full of the opposition for every game. So, I mean, talking about hard work and time-consuming management. But what 6 games he's going to watch now, I haven't got a clue. I'll wait and find out who the manager is probably and watch his last 6 games.
Neil phoned me up and said, because Neil broke the news to me about Vítor Pereira getting the sack, phoning me on the day, and he said, you've wasted your time going to the Fulham game. It'll be completely different. But identification of the players is very important. I did see 16 players play for Wolves, or 15 players play for Wolves, I think. And so I recognise them. If it's a different 15, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, but
you can't change the players.
Yeah,
you can only change the manager.
But the great thing really is that the managers who have philosophies base their philosophies on the data, and the ones who have ideas, lively ideas that keep developing and keep changing and keep relating to what's happening.
Well, that's the most obvious of that, because we don't get access to to all the detail of everything, and nor should we. But the set piece coaches, you can see in the how they put their work on the field, and now. The Portuguese coaches, and Vítor Pereira did it in his last game in charge, and Amorim does it. Maybe it's just Portuguese coaches. They rehearse the set pieces on the field in the warm up, so you can see what they're trying to do.
Well, blimey, yeah. Chelsea put out a team with players who play in the same positions, and you don't know how they're going to line up, and then they do a back 4 routine.
Yeah, well,
in the warm up, and you. Yeah.
Only the very, 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 very clever Pep Guardiola did it, and they didn't play that way.
Yeah.
And because he realised that the commentators were all leaping on it, but mostly you do see it, and even in the little bit of coaching I'm involved now, you warm them up as they're going to play.
I believe that 2 managers have handled this differently to everybody else, and that is Carlo Ancelotti and Zinedine Zidane, and I know they're both Real Madrid, but they both won multiple Champions Leagues, and no other manager was winning multiple Champions Leagues when they were, and they didn't have that same philosophy as all the others, and they prepared their team as they wanted them to play, and they both had the ability to sort out the problems during the game, and particularly change it at half-time if they had to.
Until Zinedine Zidane has a stint at Everton like Carlo Ancelotti, I won't put them in the same envelope. Talk about silver spoon in your mouth, given a job like that, and no job since.
Yeah, well, he did. He did Real Madrid twice, and he won 3 in a row. Champions League. He won 2 La Ligas, and he'll probably go and win the World Cup with France.
I don't know whether Stoke were in the Premier League when Carlo was here. I should know. But Stoke on a Tuesday night, Zinedine, I'll see you there.
I keep saying to you, the worst team at Stoke on a Tuesday night has historically been Stoke. I've been there enough times.
They're doing all right. Mark Robins, another of the good guys.
Yeah. Okay, we got to move on. And we're going to move on to 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
3 of the best. He's made them pay. And that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Young player, old player. Martin, you're young player this week, and you're doing a me.
I'm doing a you, and I think the people who are listening to this, I hope they're enjoying it. But it's a bit more self-indulgent than perhaps we've been in the previous 80-odd episodes, because I'm going for 12 teenagers who come from the Woking Academy, where I have a slight interest, shall we say. And the 12 were on a team sheet of 16 for a first team game, although not the most important first team game of a National League club, in the local cup, the Surrey Senior Cup. Four senior players played from the start, plus 7 academy boys, and then the 5 subs got on from the academy as well. So and they won. This is the punchline. They won 8-0. The opposition from much lower down the football pyramid, but they still, to win any game 8-0 was exceptional. I mention it in particular because 8 months ago, the academy was on the verge of bankruptcy. It was only external investment that saved it, and yet here we are, full flourishing, and quite a number of these boys are now being considered, for at least to train with the first team. It's an interesting process, because we're caught in the young players coming up and the young players coming down that all come together. And this is an under-19 group, the third year in the academy, the oldest. Only 3 have come through the Woking system of the 12, but we've had a player from Bournemouth, the Premier League, who's a Premier League scholar, one from Southampton when they were in the Premier League as well, from Queen's Park Rangers, and via perhaps a slightly complicated route, Sheffield United. And then we have lads from similar background, from Wimbledon, Sutton, local, and they've all come together. There's a saying in football, we're all here for a reason, and their personal reasons, but as a group, their journeys all cross over, like a tube map when there's stations that serve lots of different lines. But it was a great night. The coach, Matt Winter, is the academy director, who was a goalkeeping coach at the first team when I was working with the first team. And he's at the head of all this. And it's very proud. Actually, today I've been in there and we've sort of told them, well done, but don't get ahead of yourselves. They play in the next round against Cobham. Again, not too many people know this, but I can put some meat on that particular bone by saying it's a Lewington club. That is Craig Lewington, the younger son of Ray, is the manager, and Dean Lewington, who played for MK Dons, I think, till he's 40. Is also has an input as a member of the family. And of course, Ray is the sort of godfather of it all, and literally the father of those two. So they are a very, very well-run club at a better level than the opposition in the game, the 8-0 game. So those players, Neil Ardley and Simon Bassey, the first team manager and coach, handled the night extremely well. And they said at the end, look, we don't know whether we'll give you 4 first team or whether we'll have 4 first team players to be involved next time. So it might be all of you. And so there's a real carrot. That's going to happen later in the year. So exciting, very personal. Apologies for that, but it was a very special night watching them play. They played as well as that 8-0 suggests.
We need a match report of the Cobham game.
yes. Well, the Cobham
it's a bit of a derby, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose for me it's very close, but it's at Woking, which is further away.
My young player, I'm going the other end of the football scale. I'm going to Manchester City. My young player is Rayan Cherki, who made both goals for some geezer called Erling Haaland when Manchester City dismantled Bournemouth. Cherki cost, as social media has been full of it, over £100 million less than Florent Wirtz cost Liverpool. He came from Lyon, which of course is such a great provider of players and has been for decades.
And food, Neil.
And food.
Yeah.
I've never been to the city. Do you know?
Oh,
I've never
gosh.
been to the city of Lyon. It's a big gap in my in my life management. Have you been?
Yeah. I've commentated there, yeah.
Did you eat out there?
For me, yes.
I mean, they call it the gastronomical capital of France.
Yes. Commentators are always very careful what they eat before games, so I wouldn't say I was the most adventurous, but it was delicious.
Yeah, I'm never careful.
There's nothing wrong with a good omelette.
But Cherki has landed and looks, quite frankly, a genius. I mean, interestingly, he's playing through the middle. He's having as much responsibility put on him as Phil Foden is now at the age of 24 or whatever. They're all switching positions.
He's only just back in the team, though, isn't he? He was injured very early on this season because he did play in the Club World Cup.
Yeah, he did.
So
yeah,
he was signed in time for that.
But he's looking the part, and I cannot. Obviously, we realise how much Rodri is being missed with this injury, but I cannot stress how much I think De Bruyne is missed. And you don't lose a player like that and not suffer. But it looks as though they're building up a new one, and Cherki looks the part.
I mean, everybody would say Kevin De Bruyne at this point in time would be just as good as he was before. But of course, when you're asking for contracts and wanting contracts for longer commitments, this is where it's so difficult for the clubs, and this is where the players are on the receiving end. We're talking about that. If the players are deemed that have asked for a too long a period of service, if I don't know what Kevin wanted, but I wouldn't imagine it would be less than a 3-year deal. And they say, well, we can't believe that in a year and a half you're going to be as good as you were in the last game that you played for the club. So these things happen. So you wouldn't get De Bruyne, probably. The chances are you wouldn't get De Bruyne. So you can't miss it, what you wouldn't have, because he wouldn't be that person anymore.
Yeah.
But Rayan Cherki now played for France, hasn't he? So he's now they're getting maybe now the real problem of what's the best team now.
22 years old and looks like a great signing.
Yeah.
Old player.
This is an old player, literally an old player, who played a lot of league football in the Premier League for Middlesbrough and for Ipswich, a striker, Alan Armstrong, who currently is manager of Gateshead. And the first round of the FA Cup, they have Wimbledon, who are AFC Wimbledon, but actually do have on their history FA Cup winners 1988, though it's a slightly different organisation. We all know the story about that. And a good team, good manager, Johnny Jackson. And Gateshead went there and won 2-0, and it could have been 4 or 5 by everybody, both points of view. But what really tickled me was that they arrived at 2:20.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've been with teams like that, and sometimes it can work
for a 3 o'clock kickoff.
For a 3 o'clock kickoff, yeah.
Were they changed?
I don't know. I think they got changed at the ground, but the people were going, "Where are they?" And they
just for the record, most clubs turn up 90 minutes before the game.
Well,
that's the norm.
Yeah, that is that. And in fact, Arsene Wenger used to get the bus to drive around the block until it was the 90-minute time. He didn't want to get there 95 minutes before kickoff. That's where the data tells you shouldn't arrive 40 minutes before the kickoff. That's where you just have to live the day, and that's the point I was making earlier. Really, they got changed. Boy, did they get on with it! And so Alan Armstrong, and there is a connection which I will get onto when I get to my player. But somebody I can remember commentating on did well at Ipswich, scored against Inter Milan, I think, in a European game, scored a winning goal at Portman Road, and I think scored in both legs, actually. So he's had his highs, but as for Gateshead, have had a lot of trouble, cuts in budget, differences at the board level, change of management. So special day. There are people up there who are still ambitious to get Gateshead back in the Football League.
It's not a bad ground, actually, Gateshead.
It's horrible.
Do you say?
It's horrible. It's truly horrible. It's a running track. The stand on the far side, unless they've done something with it since I was last there, it's open. I was there when there was a deluge, and I was sitting opposite the dugout, opposite the dressing rooms, and we just got absolutely soaked. And no, it's they want to go somewhere else. We're talking about it's got a state. It's where Brendan Foster took all the athletes, didn't they? You run past it on the Great North Run. Yeah, you can see it there. But no, Neil, we will disagree on that.
I've only been on the outside. I haven't been on the inside.
No, it's not very.
My old player is Michael Carrick, West Ham, Tottenham, Manchester United. I've chosen him because after a slightly disappointing spell at Middlesbrough as manager, although he did get them to the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, he got sacked after they came 10th in the league in the Championship. He's gone into, for now, television punditry, and he seems to be a regular on BBC Match of the Day 2. As far as I'm concerned, he's gone straight into the hierarchy of outstanding.
I have to correct you. I don't think it's called Match of the Day 2 anymore.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
they dropped the 2.
Yeah,
there's so many games on Sundays.
Yeah, but he's gone for me into the absolute hierarchy of punditry. I think he's brilliant. I think he's engaging. I think he's natural broadcasting quality, and I think he is a deep thinker. And my first reactions to watching him for a couple of weeks were Coventry gave Frank Lampard another go, and it seems to be another go. I mean, not their another go, but after his time at Derby and Chelsea and Everton, and he's making an absolute go of it. Somebody's got to give Michael Carrick a go. He's clearly a clear thinker about the game. And he's such an underrated player from his time. I mean, he was bought by Manchester United basically to replace Roy Keane. And he played in the 2008, 2009 and 2011 Champions League finals. He scored a penalty in the shootout in the 2008 final, which they won. He played... He was at the absolute top of his game. He had too many injuries. He was never an England regular. He played 30-something times, 34-something times for England. Never really played in a major tournament. And in all those years where people would say Lampard and Gerrard can't play together, well, they bloody well could have done if someone had put Carrick between them and played 4-3-3. Instead of 4-4-2, they could have done, and that might have meant playing Wayne Rooney as a lone number 9, which in those years he probably wasn't capable of. Later in his career, maybe, but not then.
To see whether those 3 started in games for England.
And it's funny, before you came today, we were talking, the production team, me, and of course 2 of them Manchester United supporters.
I was at the Woking Academy. I did have a football reason for being late.
But 2 of them Manchester United supporters, which I don't hold them in any lower esteem for much. But
I did bring the programme especially for them.
One of them said, I can't remember which one said, don't you think Michael Carrick reminds you of Sergio Busquets? And funny enough, when we were talking earlier on, you and me, you commented the one thing he lacked was pace. But of course, Busquets had no pace and was widely regarded as the best player in the world in that position for a long time.
I would say Michael had the sharpest mind. And I saw him play. He was in the West Ham youth team that absolutely bestrode the Youth Cup and stuff like that with Joe Cole, who was also doing broadcasting as well.
Yeah.
And different styles, but very, very listenable too, just as Michael is. And even then, you could tell that Michael had a thinking man's approach to the game. I mean, Joe was sort of the star, but Michael, if there was second billing, it was Michael. And they won the Youth Cups. It was the second leg. I think they won 6-0. And in the final, so they were well into it. People laugh about, they talk about West Ham the West Ham way and all that, and they're going back to Ron Greenwood and the lads that won the World Cup, and as if it's, but this was much more recent. I mean, 25 years ago, I guess, something like that, and that was extraordinarily thoughtful football, and I mean, it's the best thing about the game apart from playing is talking about it, and to have an audience like he has with that, and I hope many a chairman is watching and listening and regarding that this could be an answer to a particular problem. There are some vacancies as we speak, aren't there?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to him as well and my player, but we go on to this week's player.
Well, it's a connection with Alan Armstrong, and his son Luke Armstrong played in this game, and actually came off at the same time. The game.
This is the Gateshead game. Is this the Gateshead game?
No. This is played in the game that I'm going to talk about now, which is the Carlisle game, where they came back and they won. So it was great for the north of England, the very north of our football pyramid, Gateshead and Carlisle. So Alan Armstrong, let's get it clear, the manager of Gateshead, the former Middlesbrough and Ipswich and other clubs player, and his son Luke playing for Carlisle, managed by Mark Hughes, away to Reading. And when Luke came off, they were 2-0 down. He's a forward, and he's a good forward. He scored against Woking this season. Regan Linney came on, who I've seen a lot of in non-league football, and he's 28. And
this is your player, Regan?
Yes, Regan Linney. And I don't think he's played in the Football League. He was FC United of Manchester, which is well known to some of those the other side of the cameras. Altrincham, which isn't too far away from that. And now he's joined Carlisle, and obviously Mark Hughes knows his stuff. And he scored a hat-trick. And the most amazing thing about it, well, he got 2-2, 2-0 down, going into injury time. He scores twice. And then early in the extra time, he scores the third goal. And he did say afterwards, he was jumping into the crowd and everything. He's only thought, goodness me, we've got another 25 minutes to play here. But if this is just a statistical freak. So he scored in the 93rd minute. That was his first goal. The 98th minute was his second goal.
Equalised.
And the 94th minute was his third goal. Now I can explain that, but it looks lovely when you see it. And 90 plus 3 was 93, 90 plus 8, and 94 was straight. Yeah. There's another guy, Ollie Pearce, who plays for York City, who's 28 as well, who scores bundles of goals. And I don't think he's ever played in the Football League either. He was at Bognor and Worthing, and he went to York when the manager, who was Jack Inchelswood's dad, went to York, and he just scores for fun. And how they're probably both too old to go into the Football League, but headline making for Carlisle, Regan Linney, and good luck to him. You never know. Sometimes you do get a chance late on, or maybe what he's really hoping for is that Carlisle get promoted and he goes into the Football League with them, which nearly happened to Ollie Pearce. They missed out. They scored all those points. You remember York, nearly 100 points last year, and lost in the playoffs. Otherwise, Ollie Pearce would be a league player now.
I've got two players this week. One is someone I'd never heard of, Geertruida, the Dutch centre-back, who came down.
Definitely more than promising.
Who came through at Feyenoord
I think it is.
just over a year ago, was sold to RB Leipzig for 20 million euros, never made a fist of it at Leipzig, and was loaned out to Sunderland. At Sunderland, he was a substitute and not a starter. But Sunderland came down to Chelsea, and having played 4 at the back all season, went 3 central defenders, 5 at the back. They were also without Omar Alderete, who had concussion.
He scored the winner at Forest in the game that I saw.
So they needed an extra centre-back, and he got a go. And he was the left-sided centre-back in the 3, or the left central player in the 5, whichever way you want to put it. And in stoppage time, when they were defending well, the ball came to him, deflected to him off a Chelsea attack, and he looked upfield and he saw someone making a run behind the centre-backs from the centre circle, and he launched the ball forward. But he didn't just launch the ball forward. It was an excellent ball. He didn't just launch it forward. He chased it. And one of the things that a number of top professionals have told me in the past is it's sometimes very clever to chase your pass, because it fools the defending teams. They expect you to go somewhere else. But if you chase it, often when the ball comes back to you, you won't be marked. Well, the person he left behind is the greatest midfielder in the world, Moises Caicedo, who was closing him down when he launched it. He left him behind and he raced the length of the pitch. And Reece James, who was at right back, left the left winger because he was going through the middle of the pitch and was available for a pass and a shot, and tracked him. And the ball was got from the right of the penalty area across to the left winger, now left free, Chemzine Talbi, who had just come on to score his first goal in English football, because nobody else took the job of tracking him. But Geertruida never got any kudos, I didn't think, any recognition for what he did. He completely made that goal, not just with his pass, but with his run. And that run, in stoppage time, when you're starting your first game in English football, is about desire. It's about commitment. It's about wanting to make a difference. He's a defender. He wanted to make a difference. And I remember I took over in 1991. I took over the Chelsea Monthly newspaper, and I did it at the last moment. And I took 4 guys who had never worked in football. I was already working in the club, within the club. I took 4 guys down to training, or up to training, I should say. It was pre-season training at Aberystwyth to get the first copy of the paper out. And we were talking to one of the coaches at Chelsea, and he was saying, only one thing matters at this level, and it's commitment. He said, you've got the technique, you've got the quality. The only thing that matters, what makes the difference, is commitment. Are you committed? Are you really in for it? And one of the guys said, I've got the commitment. Why can't I do it? He said, because you haven't got the given quality. But the commitment is the difference. Well, I think there's a lot in that, though obviously if you've got the skills of a Foden, a Palmer or whatever, a Cherki, it makes the difference. But Geertruida had the commitment, and I just want to give him a shout out.
I think you're right, Neil, because he came on in the game. I mentioned earlier, I did the Sunderland win at Nottingham Forest a few weeks ago. He came on, and at a time where Sunderland probably should have been in old money, defending for their lives, he was chasing up the field. I don't think he played as a wing-back, I think, but he nearly scored in a very, very late on. A brilliant piece of play. So, you pluck one out of... not too many people will be... There'll be people looking up on their phones now. Yeah. We've got 1 or 2 in this room, actually, who, as to his background. Yeah. But no, that's a very good choice.
But I want to give one that everyone will know as well, and that's Declan Rice. And it's just Declan Rice was let go by Chelsea age 14. He was a centre-back. He was turned into an England player by West Ham as a holding midfielder.
Well, he turned into an Irish player first.
Yeah, true. And he's then been turned by Arsenal into a box-to-box midfielder. And I thought, nah, ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous. He's fantastic. And he's I mean, so many players start off up front or in midfield and move back. But Rice has gone the other way. It's very unusual to go the other way.
Put him in the list of England centre forwards now, shall we?
Well, I'm beginning to wonder. I'll tell you what, he'd give it his all.
He would. He certainly would.
And the interesting thing about him, taking us back to the beginning of what we were talking about, he's 6'3", Declan Rice, something like that. Yeah. And to have him in midfield as part of your shield when you're defending the extra player, and to have him on set plays. I know he takes a lot of them, but to be involved. I mean, someone of that ilk is just so important, valuable.
Those who are categorising football by the week will tell you that that's just normal now. 6'3". Well, everybody who's being recruited is big.
But if we go back to the Invincibles, when you go back to that team, Thierry Henry 6'2", 6'3", Bergkamp 6 feet, but the left winger Pires was 6'1". Central midfield, Vieira was 6'4". Gilberto Silva was, I think, 6'3". I mean, this was a huge team, and it just seems to me that Arsenal have sort of given a nod back to that. And the reason I said I'm going to come back to Michael Carrick, he played in that role for Manchester United, the holding role, 6'2".
Yeah, it's a big
my question to you. My question to you, 6'3" Martin Tyler, is: does size matter?
Well, I used to be 6'3.5", but the aging process has robbed me of that little bit extra that might have got me in front of a defender to score a goal. Of course, it's what you said earlier, joking aside about commitment, is very, very true. How much do they want it? How much do players want it? There's so much now that you get riches very quickly in the game. How much do you want to push yourself when you're not such a hungry player in terms of economics? How much? The best do, and we love it, because that's, I think, the ultimate, whatever people's opinions are about what we've talked about today, whatever you see football through the lenses of your own eyes, and your interpretation of it, it gives you something very special, and everyone, I believe, is entitled to their own opinion, and the fact that so many people have so many different opinions is a brilliant thing, and it's kept us going. How many episodes are we now?
83.
83. Oh, it's overtake my age then.
It has, yeah, and you won't get it back either.
So there's one last ritual to go through.
There is, and it is Martin Tyler's letter from the gantry.
Letter from the gantry.
Thanks, Neil. At this time of the season, clambering up slippery ladders to precarious commentary positions is a newish routine for football commentators, with the younger members of the profession having to cope with players without names on the backs of their shirts, non-league sides numbering 1 to 11, floodlighting no brighter than a dimmer switch, and worst of all, mud, making the primary discipline of identification a very inexact science. That is exactly as it was even in top-level football when I started out decades ago. But nowadays, it's often seen in the first-round proper of the FA Cup to pose these puzzles for broadcasters. Home advantage for an underdog attracts the fixture pickers, so all the above difficulties often still apply at this time of the year. Today, however, more games are televised, so there is much wider coverage. The bigger clubs from Leagues 1 and 2 do have home ties screened with their better floodlights, squad numbers, names on shirts, and mud-free pitches. My recent assignment came into that category. Luton Town were having to enter at this stage after a gap of 7 years, during which they had earned exemption to round 3 through 6 seasons in the Championship, and 2 years ago, 1 season in the Premier League. Incidentally, then they got to the 5th round, but conceded 5 to Erling Haaland alone, as Manchester City posted a 6-2 triumph at Kenilworth Road. This season, Luton were drawn at home to National League Forest Green Rovers, both clubs having endured back-to-back relegations in recent times. Alongside the contest between the two clubs, the evening was also billed as a head-to-head between two football celebrities, former international players, but very inexperienced managers. Ex-England Jack Wilshere was taking charge of just his 4th game for Luton against Robbie Savage, also in his first season in the dugout, having joined Forest Green in the summer. Player turned pundit turned part owner, and now a rookie boss. Until injuries intervened, Jack had a spell with Arsenal when he was arguably the best player in the country. Robbie played almost 350 Premier League games, always breathing the fire of a Welsh dragon. Their age difference is 18 years, but it was still a surprise to find out they'd never had a midfield matchup against one another. There was much mutual respect in their respective pre-match press conferences, and even during the game, a match which showed both their squads in a very positive light. Their approaches were different though. Wilshere went with a strong base from his debut victory in the job at Northampton in League One the previous Saturday. Savage took the opposite approach, giving youth a chance with what he described as the youngest lineup in the club's history. He did include all 4 players he'd signed from the club he served so well as a part owner, Macclesfield. The latest, winger Sean Etaluku, in a deal only completed just in time for him to be registered for the tie. I mentioned Sean specifically because he had played and scored for Macclesfield in the FA Cup in the qualifying rounds, which in the past would have rendered him cup-tied. But now those rules have changed. You can move clubs and be eligible for your new team, even if you've taken part in FA Cup fixtures before the first round proper. That it was Halloween added to a great atmosphere. Forest Green defender Abraham Kanu even played in a mask. There were tricks and treats all round. The match was a cracker. Luton 3-0 up. Forest Green, with the aid of a raft of second-half substitutes, got it back to 3-3 and then hit the bar. Then it was 4-3 to Luton in the 92nd minute, before the non-leaguers squandered one more golden chance to take the game into extra time with what turned out to be almost the last kick of the match. Jack Wilshere, who twice won the FA Cup as a player, could celebrate a 3rd win in a week as a rookie manager. But that gut-wrenching feeling as the opposition knocked off that 3-0 lead will stay, I'm sure, with him forever. His naturally calm, understated dugout persona must have been tested to the full. Robbie Savage was extrovertly energetic from start to finish, in stylish attire that you wouldn't find as benchwear in any sporting clothes catalogue, and was justifiably proud of the comeback, even if it didn't quite finish the job. He later called it his proudest day in football. He probably got more close-ups on the television coverage than any of the players, and why not from his friends and colleagues on the channel that was covering the tie and that he still works for. So, hatters off and running in the FA Cup. It was all right, Jack, just on that Friday night. Forest Green left, as they say, to concentrate on the league, and in their case, climbing back into the EFL. And for their manager, there was a consolation prize the very next day. Macclesfield, the club Robbie Savage did so much to rebuild, sailed into the second round of the FA Cup.
I want to do something that is absolutely ludicrous. I want to compare, very quick comparisons, 2 Welsh players, Robbie Savage and Gareth Bale. And the reason I want to do that is that I think if you have a certain quality, it's really important when you change clubs that you're able to take that quality with you. And Robbie Savage wasn't a world-class player. He'd be the first to admit that. But he was a good player. And at Leicester, he took all the set plays. And he was good at set plays. He wasn't genius, but he was good. He served Leicester well, and they got a lot of goals, and he got a lot of assists from set plays. Then he goes to Birmingham.
So we're not actually back in the era of set pieces, then. It's been there all the time, hasn't it?
So he goes to Birmingham and then Blackburn, who were good Premier League clubs at the time, and he didn't take the set plays. So he didn't have so many goal involvements. And in the same way, Gareth Bale at Tottenham, before he went to Real Madrid, took all the set plays. And he scored as well as made goals from his set plays because he was a genius. He was world class. But of course, when he went to Real Madrid, there was some geezer there called Cristiano Ronaldo. And not only did he not take any set plays, he wasn't even allowed in the discussion about set plays. And a really big element of his quality was left out of his time at Real Madrid. And I just think, I'm not going to say that Gareth Bale was a failure at Real Madrid, and I'm not going to say that he wasn't a great player at Real Madrid. He won a lot of Champions Leagues and what have you. But I just think when you move club, you want to take with you all the qualities that you have. And if you discover you're not going to be allowed to participate in them, you want to think carefully about whether you want to move there.
I go back to what I said about a young player. If the deal's a good one, you don't really look at that, to be honest, Neil. And I could imagine if Gareth was here, and we'd love to have him here, I don't think he'd be losing sleep over the fact he didn't take too many set pieces at Real Madrid. He had a wonderful time, and they're very different. You're asking sort of comparison, very different people. Gareth's quiet and much more understated, but very, very shrewd and a very bright football mind. And Robbie is warmly in your face. Forest Green played at Woking earlier in the season, and I saw him. He was out on the pitch beforehand, before the game started. I said, "Come on," and we had a chat. And he said, "By the way, my team's good." And then I went back to the end, and they'd won 2-0. I went back, "You were right." And he's got that. I can imagine it inspiring, particularly with the young players. It was quite an interesting team selection. He didn't pick his best players to start, but it came out afterwards that he thought Luton, who had played in the midweek, but not with the same players. Jack Wilshere used 24 players in those Saturday, Tuesday games, so he had plenty to choose from. But he said that he thought Luton would tire. They certainly lost their concentration. And had it gone 4-3 when they had it at the bar to Forest Green, or 4-4 to extra time, it wouldn't have been an injustice. But they had the best huddle of a losing team I've ever seen afterwards. And he obviously led the oratory of it. So good luck to them both. For Jack, that was a winning and learning on the same night. It's not too bad, really, is it? So I'd be very interested to say, if we look at the end of the season, will Forest Green be promoted? And the Forest Green, of course, known as the eco-friendly club. I think their kit is designed in such a way, vegan. They sell it as a vegan kit. It's got leopard spots on it. It's very into nature, and there's a lot of that going on. I believe there were trees planted somewhere in the world for the goals that they scored. It's all sorts of issues about it, but the truth is, it was a very good football match.
Thank you if you've watched or listened to the end of this, and if you have, I hope you've understood and reached the obvious conclusion that Martin is the financial realist and I am the dreamer.
I think that's the absolute opposite of the truth. All inquiries of a financial nature to the joy of football, which we hope there might be some, go to Neil Barnett. And if you want to talk football, especially the romance of it, football, and having an involvement academy that gets 12 players in the first team on one particular night, I'm your man.
Stick with the club where you play your best. From Martin and me.
Cheers.
Ta-ra. That's great. Don't forget, of course, if you really want to get more involved, to go to the Patreon, where there's so much more for you to get involved in. Martin, you've just been going on about the first round of the FA Cup. Just remind us, when you got to the third round as an assistant manager at Woking, what was your second round game?
We beat Swindon Town away 1-0.
Who were in what division?
They might have been in League 2 then, I think. But we were very much the underdogs. It was a wonderful occasion, and so was playing Watford. We've talked about it a lot of time in the podcast. You brought it up this time. It's usually me. But
yeah, so
I love the FA Cup because I played in the qualifying rounds, and it was always special. Back then, of course, the FA Cup was the be-all and end-all of live television, really. The final was so many people that grew up in the 50s, 60s and 70s, where the cup final day was shut yourself off from the rest of the world, watch your telly, you know?
Yeah. And when you got to a certain age, drink all day, but you never got to that age.
No. Well, I might, but not yet.
Thanks for listening, watching. Patreon, subscribe, substack.com, read. Get on with your week.